Great. Hello, everybody. Thankful to be spending the next hour and a half together discussing community engagement. Wanted to give us a chance to all arrive together. I know for me, it's been a bit of a busy week with a day off. And so wanted to start with a little bit of grounding, and I wanted to share Smiling as a Practice, which is from this book written by Thich Nhat Hanh, who was a Vietnamese monk and mindfulness teacher. And so just wanted to do brief reading and take this as an opportunity to just settle in. So smiling as a practice. In the exercise, breathing in, I smile. You may ask, why should I smile when there is no joy in me? The answer to that is smiling is a practice. There are over 300 muscles in your face. When you are angry or fearful, these muscles tense up. The tension in these muscles create a feeling of hardness. If you know how to breathe in and produce a smile, however, the tension will disappear. It is what I call mouth yoga. Make smiling an exercise. Just breathe in and smile. The tension will disappear and you will feel much better. So I just wanted to take a moment together to breathe in and smile. And, you know, if there is a moment that you have during the workshop where you just need to exercise your face muscles, always remember that a smile is available. And I'm going to pass it to Maya.
My name is Maya Herring. I am the Art Town Specialist with the National Endowment for the Arts. And I'm so excited to be here today with you all, with this wonderful resource team that we have to help facilitate breakouts. And I just wanted to share a little bit of news from the NEA. We recently sent out a grant announcement, sharing news about FY23 grant awards that included 57 new Art Town projects, which we're very excited about, that are close to $4 million worth of federal dollars going towards communities across the country. So if you haven't seen that, hopefully you'll be able to check that out and look at some of those projects. We've also just updated our grant guidelines for the FY24 grant cycle, which so the application is open. You can view the application on our website, download a PDF of that, and you can see FAQs and some updates that we've made to the program for FY24. We're particularly interested in arts, design, and culture projects that are at the intersection of health and wellness, transportation and infrastructure, and climate challenges within communities. So hopefully that's inspiring to you all or your partners or your communities. And if you are thinking about applying for FY24, please join the NEA team for a webinar that we'll be hosting on June 15th at 2 o'clock Eastern time to go over those grant guidelines. So more information about that can be found on the NEA's website on the Art Town page. And also, yeah, hope to see you there or your communities there. I'm going to turn it back to Melissa and team.
Thanks, Maya. Can we get the slides back up? Great. So I'm Melissa Kim. I'm the director of the Creative Placemaking Technical Assistance Program. And I'm here with many of my fellow Our Town resource team members who you'll meet during the breakouts. As we get into today, we wanted to offer these these community guidelines to help all of us strive for a more welcoming and affirming convening. First, we invite you to change your Zoom name and include your pronouns. To do that, go to the upper right-hand corner of your little video box and click on rename. And we encourage you to add your pronouns. Second, closed captioning is available. If you'd like to turn on or off the English closed captions, go to the bottom of your screen where you see the 3 dots and select show subtitle. Third, presentations will be recorded. The breakout sessions will not be recorded. And we'll share out the video and post it on our website. If you don't want to be recorded, please feel free to turn off your video and keep yourself muted. Next, listen deeply and make no assumptions. We're here to learn together. So we really want to encourage you to just come with an open mind and ready to learn. Lastly, we really want you to use the chat. We're also here to connect with each other and share our experiences and questions and concerns. So please feel free to chat away. And we also encourage you to use the chat now to say hello. Please write in the chat your name, where you're located, and if you want a word describing how you're entering the space today. And as you think about location, we offer in the chat a link to a map maintained by Native Land Digital as an important reminder that the place that we call home first belonged to Indigenous people. We encourage you to visit the website to learn about the land you inhabit. And now I'm going to turn it back to Theresa.
Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it. So yes, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. I want to do, oh, here we go. Wanted to do a quick overview of the agenda and how we're going to spend the next 90 minutes together. So we are in the welcome portion of the workshop. I'm going to be sharing brief thoughts on community engagement. And then after that, we're going to have a chance to dive into a little bit more deeper discussion, and folks can share what their existing engagement activities are in small groups. From there, we'll do a quick break. And then after the break, Cornerstone Theater Company will be sharing ways that community engagement have been incorporated in their amazing creative practice. And then we get to do a bit of a question and answer, so you all can directly ask questions and hear from the wisdom that Cornerstone has been able to collect. We'll have some ending reflections, and then we'll close in an hour and a half. So that is our journey together. I really wanted to start with some general comments about community engagement. I don't know if folks, so I'm an architect. I'm a designer of the built environment. I'm located in Los Angeles on occupied Tongva land. And for me, community engagement is really a core process, but also value in my creative practice. And to me, it really is about creating an open, welcoming, and inclusive process that increases participation with community members in community development and creative placemaking projects. For me, it's always a chance to clarify issues and understand with nuance what community members are facing, and then more directly design appropriate solutions collectively. So like Melissa said in community guidelines, make no assumptions. We definitely want to do that when we're working on our projects too. This opportunity to build deeper relationships and trust with community members across various stakeholders has always been a genuinely beautiful part of the community engagement process. This ability to reallocate power and move decision-making into the hands of community members that will be most impacted by the project has always been a huge goal of my own community engagement practice. But it also is an opportunity to create greater ownership, the idea of stewardship and sustainability of the project beyond sort of the development. And so really thinking about the long-term success of the project usually comes wrapped together with community engagement. And I am having a bit of an issue advancing my slides. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Okay. So I wanted to talk about who are we engaging, right? It's all about the people. Oftentimes, I think community tends to be a very general, sometimes anonymous entity. And so here's, a quick list of possible people that should be included in the project. I like to use this lens of frequency of who will be experiencing the project, who is going to be interacting, activating, living with the project or program. And so for me, the people who will be experiencing on an everyday basis tend to be centered. And then so again, as you move away, if you think about monthly, annually, or even less frequently than that, their experiences and wisdom tend to become decentered. And so for me, that idea of the people who are most impacted by the project are also guiding and advising the community engagement, but also the direction of the solutions is key. When are we engaging community members? For me, it's as early and as often as possible. Engagement is, not only a chance to understand ideas and what the issues are at a hand, but it's also an opportunity to hold the project team accountable. It's a process of checking in. So it's an opportunity to say, we heard this. This is the way that we're incorporating it into the project. Does this feel right? And again, to keep an ongoing conversation with community members throughout the project is not only a beautiful community building opportunity, but also making sure that the project is as aligned with community intent and values as possible. And so on this slide, you can also see suggested milestones for engagement. And some of these processes typically don't involve community members. And so the more opportunities to include community participation, sort of, again, the greater alignment is possible. Always asking myself, how can I make processes more equitable? And so these are 4 key questions that I typically ask myself. How am I making the process transparent? What is the information that needs to be shared in order for people to understand what's happening, whether it is budget constraints or, project parameters. How are we sharing the information of what decisions need to be made and how they're being made? Equitable representation key, right? Who are the voices that aren't in the room and who needs to be in the room? Who's never in the room? How do we make space to ensure that they're a part of the creative process? Again, this idea of reallocating power and decision-making to move away from, traditional top-down approaches, greater opportunities for equity. And then this idea of credit, how a lot of times, many people will be involved in the design process, but sometimes you'll only see, a handful of names. What are ways that we're attributing credit, even authorship, to the communities that help us not only guide and shape, but also create the impact associated with our projects? And this idea of ethical engagement has been really important to me. We want to make sure that we're not creating harm. I think something we don't talk enough about in the context of community engagement, because we, often celebrate how wonderful, how successful it is, but, there are times where we can be creating negative impact with our engagement. I remember I had a project where I was working at an affordable housing nonprofit, and we wanted to sort of improve older buildings. And so our housing director had an idea of adding a green roof to a building. And so we're like, yeah, that's great. And so our first engagement meeting was about co-designing this, roof garden, and people were taken aback, really surprised. This project came out of nowhere, and it created a lot of negative discussion. People were like, we never asked for this. People who lived right under the roof, didn't want people upstairs, or folks were saying the building is quiet, I use the park next door. This was an unintended negative impact that what I'm learning now then was an inappropriate engagement activity. And so really thinking about how do we create, some safeguards to ensure that engagement is also aligned with what the community wants. And so when I reflect on that process, we probably should have started with, what type of open spaces do you need? Instead of, saying, what do you want your rooftop garden to look like? So recognizing sometimes when you make too many steps, it actually can create negative impact as opposed to the positive impact that you're hoping for. And so that was a lot of information I'm going to be flying through because there's so much information to share, but I know that there are a lot of people in the room with a ton of expertise around community engagement. And I was hoping that folks could share, what are ways that you have fostered a supportive space for community engagement so that voices that are not typically included are centered and amplified? What do you do to make people feel seen and heard? Because that is a key part of, building not only the trust necessary for deep engagement, but also fosters the longevity of engagement to come. So folks can take a moment, share in the chat, that would be great. Okay, and so we also wanted to share a specific tool and framework. And this spectrum of community engagement to ownership that the Movement Strategy Center developed with Facilitating Power is fantastic. It really looks at, it looks linear, but it is looking at ways of increasing decision-making and creating more equitable processes. And so when you look at this stance towards community, I always think of community engagement, it's a relationship. I always think of it as like, who is the host, right? And who are the participants, like who are the people attending? And so this stance is that relationship between the host and the participants, and really thinking about, there are strategies that are very intentional about ignoring and excluding people and denying access to decision-making. Oftentimes, there are ways of informing or, in one direction, sharing information with community groups, like, this train line is going to be, implemented in this community on this date. The idea of consultation begins to shift of like, okay, instead of just one direction, how do we receive information from community that we may need? And so it's this idea of maybe potentially asking specific questions, and whether or not that input is included, that's not necessarily accounted for. That's where, when we get to stage 3 or stance 3 involved, that's when things around power and decision-making begins to shift. And so this is where community needs and assets are starting to become integrated, but also shape what the possible solution implementation can be. So this is, again, receiving information and having that now alter the course of what the potential solution could be. This idea of collaboration, we're really getting into, delegated power. Community leaders are now, and community members are part of decision-making and prioritizing and making sure that the solutions are more closely aligned with community needs. And then this idea of community ownership or community control, where things really are genuinely directed by community, for us, by us. And so these are, this is probably more legible. Apologize for not showing this sooner. This idea of really incorporating community participation becomes also helpful. There's a list of different activities and what they look like on this spectrum. And so, you think about who's hosting and what strategies are typically used. So when I think about a lot of the work that I'm doing, I try to, I have goals around really trying to involve, co-design, really have people's experiences shape what the solutions can potentially be. This is a lot of information, so we're going to have an opportunity to discuss it more in depth. The small group activity will be on this spectrum of community engagement, and you'll have an opportunity to sort of apply it to the work that you're doing and locate yourself on the spectrum as well. So more to come on this. And so in the chat, if you can share, what is the level of engagement that you typically include in your projects? That would be helpful to understand, what is happening nationally? What are ways that you're thinking about engagement? And in the last few minutes of my presentation, I wanted to share my own ways that I've been able to incorporate community engagement into my own design practice. And so I was going to share sort of the engagement arc of a cultural plan that I worked on. I was invited by Asian Arts Initiative to think about Chinatown North and Callowhill with community members through this project called People, Power, and Place. And so we wanted to create a cultural plan, but beyond a specific strategy around arts and cultural programming, we wanted to think about how do we create equitable neighborhoods, but through the lens of culture. And so Chinatown North was has been going through a lot of gentrification. So we were like, how do we use culture as a strategy to root existing community, but also then steward welcomed growth and opportunities, but still honor, preserve what's existing to us. And so we went through a deep engagement process. And when we looked on the spectrum, again, trying to start on like involve, but really go towards this idea of collaboration, co-creation, in order to make sure that this cultural plan was an opportunity to really think about equitable development of the community. And so we had so many different ways that we tried to incorporate community. First and foremost, we wanted to have an ongoing community representation. So we created a community advisory group. So people from small businesses, the local elementary school, spiritual institutions, social service agencies, Asian Arts was also a community based organization. And brought them all to one table, and they have never been at one table to talk about an issue. So just this idea of on an ongoing basis, collecting this diverse group of perspectives, but also coming together to steward the neighborhood was really important. Everyone had an MOU, and we made sure everyone was paid for their work. This was key in terms of creating guiding principles and ongoing just community input through the project. We went through a participatory asset mapping phase to just see what's existing. So before even thinking about what are ways that we want to improve the neighborhood, we first wanted to take stock of what's there. And so when it is community members asking questions, but also directly making assessments and observations, the information collected becomes a little bit more nuanced, but also we're getting to a deeper level of familiarity and understanding of the neighborhood. And so we had so many different forms of asset mapping. We had, data collection, which you saw that we worked with young people and community leaders, and people who were part of the resident advisory group brought their own members to also walk the neighborhood and collect information. We had little cards where people can write thoughts, draw thoughts, make models. This idea of just sort of material as language and using as many as you can so that people can find what's a right fit. Some folks aren't really good at writing, but give them a little bit of cardboard and they can really more better express what they're thinking about. We had surveys to distribute at community events. And so thinking about, not everyone can come to a 60-minute workshop, but maybe they can fill out a 10-minute survey while, they attend church. After we went through some of this, discovery and asset mapping phase, we had a series of design workshops where then we started to talk about, then what is your vision for the neighborhood? Where do you want to go? And we made sure we had all of these workshops on site at community locations. So in the elementary school or at the neighborhood association, so that people didn't always have to come to us, but we were able to go to them. We had different exercises around priorities and voting and, making sure people had opportunities to really understand what are some of the improvements, but really how do we make sure that people are able to lift up the things that they wanted to see. And I think also understanding this idea of engagement is not static. It's also not linear. I think a lot of times multiple forms of engagement can happen even in one workshop. And so there are moments where, I am informing, letting people know, X, Y, and Z is happening. Other times, it's deeply collaborative. We'll go into a process of, co-designing, solutions. And so engagement can go from informing to involving to collaborating, back to, informing. This is the outcomes of the cultural plan. These are some of the long-term and short-term suggestions that we came up with. And so really thinking about engagement on the spectrum has been helpful for me to think about, what is a goal? What is the quality of participation that you want people to experience? but then also, what is the information or ideas or vision that we need in order to make sure that we're manifesting what the values and culture and needs of the community really are. So over the course of a year, we involved over 700 people. We had all these different events with various different stakeholders, but also had a lot of fun. We had a block party. Anytime there was a chance for a public community event, we set up a table and we went to the people and made sure that there was a chance for as much interaction as possible. And so from there, I just wanted to ask folks, again, there's been a lot of community engagement in your projects. What is one of your favorite community engagement activities that you'd like to share, whether it's you hosting or if it's, something memorable that you attended? And if you can place it in the chat, that would be great. And so I'm going to take a breath because that was a lot of information. I appreciate you all sort of hanging with me as I share some of the information. I definitely have some lessons learned. We will send this out later, but first and foremost, we have to compensate community wisdom, period. It's not just the people on staff or the paid artists. What are ways that we can make sure that community engagement is also, it's work, it's labor. Things that I've learned, facilitation takes a long time to learn. And so be patient with yourself. If you're just starting on your engagement process, you may not be able to get to effective co-collaboration right away. And again, you move at the speed of trust, and some of this work takes time. And, this is in the workbook where you can really, I want folks to also take an opportunity to think about, how can you make your engagement a little bit more equitable? And so from there, I want to smile for a second. And we're going to go into small group activity. This is going to be a chance for us to, again, talk about some of the information. You share where you're at right now with your engagement activities, and then also try to locate some of what's happening on the spectrum of community engagement to ownership. And so I'm actually going to change to a different breakout. So we're going to go into breakouts for about 20 minutes, and we're going to work on an activity. And I'm going to screen share what we're going to do. You're going to be in a room with 3 other people and a facilitator. So you will have a guide. And what we're going to do is a quick sticky note activity where you're going to have a chance to take a sticky note activity. So write in what your existing engagement activity is. So you can just say, model making workshop. And then once you type that in, if you hover on the edge of your sticky note, you can actually drag in and put on the spectrum where that is. So let's say that's something about involving and collaborating because you're trying to have community members shape their workshop. This is a chance for all the participants to share where they're at. And then from there, we'll go into conversation as it relates to, are there ways that you want to move on the spectrum? Are there ways of peer sharing ideas on how to move on the spectrum? And so that's sort of the quick gist of what the small group activity is. You'll have a facilitator, and we will get back to each other at 11 or whatever your time at 52. So we'll have 20 minutes from there. Does that feel good to folks? All right. As folks are resuming back, hopefully good conversation was prompted by the spectrum of community engagement to ownership. Probably got cut off mid-sentence. And so hopefully you got a chance to at least connect with your other room buddies, and maybe you can continue your conversation afterwards. Let's see if everyone has made it back into the room. Great. We're going to go through just sharebacks from each room. If folks wanted to just give highlights of what conversation was about, or a lesson learned or something like that, just so that we have a taste of what happened while we were all running through the internets. Can we start with group one?
Sure, I'll share out just a little bit here, and Melissa, if I'm missing something, or other folks who are note takers, just jump in, because I was into heavy listening and perhaps not as much into the share back. But one thing I heard just as a theme was just the importance of meeting people, where they were, and in the context of youth, it wasn't just having an assembly at a high school. It was going directly into the classroom and working with individual teachers and individual students in classes. The importance of just strong foundation of listening to community members, and just the idea. It's something that I hadn't heard this phrase before, but I sort of liked how it was phrased. It's the idea of a resident wish list, and how that came about was really interesting as well. We didn't get to the point of where they fit on the spectrum. Like, we had like 60 seconds left for that part. So those are the two big takeaways.
Thanks, group one. Yay. Group two.
Alrighty, I will report out for group two. We had a great discussion. I would say a couple of highlights or themes that we observed. One was just kind of like finding ways to spread the word about community assets. Whether it's through public art displays, whether it's through events where different community organizations and businesses can come out, but just kind of getting to a place where people can mix with each other and really understand like what community assets are there and how folks might be able to plug in or engage. And then I would say kind of on the other part of this, on another part of the spectrum, thinking about like community-driven prototyping as a way of really deeply partnering with communities to co-design spaces. So thinking about little kind of like prototype projects as a way to not just get input, but also really dream and imagine what, a total like a finished product could be, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you. Yay, group two. Group three.
Yeah, hi. We ran out of time, but a couple of things that came up is just the sort of necessity of collaboration and how important that is, and really involving the various and diverse stakeholders, and art being a kind of common denominator that brought people together. We did start to talk about what equity would look like in these collaborations and in this work, and some of the things that came up were about making the programs free and really looking at equitable transportation and ability to participate.
Great, thank you. I've already lost count of the number of groups. Next, group four. Thank you, Rachel. Yay. Group three, group four.
Hi, yeah, reporting from group four. We also definitely were short on time. I feel like that was not actually 20 minutes, but we had a lovely round of introductions, which was great, just to connect in that way. But one person was able to start sharing about an activity that they're engaged in. And it's a matter of that they're doing a phase 1 capital projects design of a community center or a future art campus. And like that they're coming up with a lot of different activities, but also trying to figure out like how do they keep people interested in where like electric sockets and elevators go in comparison to the broader vision and excitement around having an art campus. And something that I was starting to say as we were coming down on the clock to end our breakout rooms was to possibly consider accessibility, and particularly for elevators and things like that, like leading with accessibility and thinking about it for your community members and your fellow residents, of like how to design those spaces and keep that as part of the overall vision.
Thank you, Group 4. I also just wanted to chime in, accessibility around your engagement process is important too. You know, I think that's something that we learned a lot during the past few years when a lot of in-person shifted to virtual, and really thinking about, you know, health and wellness and safety and accessibility. And so I know that's something I didn't formally say in the presentation, but also keeping that in mind, like how do we still keep this culture of collective care infused with our engagement processes? So yes, in the design and in the process. Okay, thank you. Yay, Group 4, Group 5.
And I'm unmuted. Hi, everybody. We had good time. We had good introductions. It's so painfully wonderful to do this because you hear such amazing things and you get like this little taste of what's going on from the people involved. And it's a special kind of torture. So here are some of the ideas we shared. One was about the power of having charrettes where people come together and actually kind of brainstorm doing some activity. Marisa, that's kind of the jet, right? And she made the point that a lot of people didn't know what that was. So there was a kind of a pleasure and an excitement at discovering something like humans do. Jeff talked about project prototypes, doing prototypes, and that doing several different prototypes of several different possibilities in Hazard, Kentucky, and the power of doing that and got people to get hands-on and a way of making it real. There's I think we had the idea of the community forming a community advisory group, and that it wasn't necessarily a group that met all together, but that having it as part of the project helped engage and helped things move forward. And then inviting families to participate in arts classes as the way of kicking off, I think, involvement in the project. And that was described as for a community center, inviting them to a community center, which wasn't yet a community center. And I just threw in the power of naming things, right? That you can start little kind of subterranean ways of changing things and bringing ideas, seeding ideas and possibilities, just simply in the way you're calling things, and bring things into being just by how you name something. We learned that there's shared knowledge out there about the challenge of singing being one of the activities, the power of it, but how using sound, the word sound instead of singing, just because I think people's humiliation factor. And that's it, and much more. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I think we're on Group 6. Yes, thank you. Yay, Group 5.
I think, Scott, you're up, even though we're not Group 6.
Oh, okay. I was like, we're Group 9? Hi, everyone. Yes, our group, as you know, we all did, it got cut short, partly my fault, because I was like, we have so much time, and then it was like 5 minutes. We're like, oh, so we got through intros. And then very, very quickly talked about, I mean, just to sum up, we both heard about a wind chime project in Memphis and Germantown area. That was a sort of a tree mapping project to get to know some of the local trees in the region. And also heard about a graffiti jam art project that was both a way to add color and art, and also somewhat unusual for graffiti jams in a more rural community. But both of these projects were very much about like collaboration with neighborhoods, with local community organizations, groups, youth, and both of them sort of landed in around the involve and collaborate area. I think one interesting thing that we just started to talk about and then ran out of time was, I think for one project, it was like, that is the place where that work belonged. Like it didn't really make sense. And that for that kind of work to push it towards, more of deferring to just for the nature of that work. And then I think one thing we talked about was, the projects can sometimes, that's as much as it needs to be, and that actually can be the starting place for moving in that direction if that's where you want to go, to kind of building that base of community and activating that power that's already there. And then another shared, it was also about the parameters of the grant, just the timeline, like what needed to be proposed in order to apply, kind of limited what kind of project, what kind of community engagement could happen in the beginning. And so that's kind of where it landed. So yeah, just interesting things to think about in terms of your deliverables, your how just even the format of the Our Town projects, and is this just the right place for you in your community?
Okay, great, thank you. And then I think we have one last group 8, right?
Hey, was that group 7? Okay. So unless we're missing, was there a group 7? No.
No group 7.
No
I
group
don't
7.
Was there?
I don't think, maybe not. Okay. So again, yeah, we got started late, so we did not hear from everyone, but I will say one of the big takeaways that I got as I was listening is one of the folks that shared is from an organization that I would say is an organization with some power in the community. And I was really encouraged to hear how they created these different points of entry for community members to engage. So all the way from kind of the one end of the spectrum of Inform, where they started this leadership academy. And so that was more kind of that informational piece, all the way up to kind of this community review board for the defer, all the way to the defer was where it was placed, where folks in that group could look at grant applications, make decisions, have power in that. And so I really love that idea of like creating these entry points for folks to engage, and how do you continue to move, because some people might not be ready to jump into the defer yet. I mean, some are. The other question that I would pose, and I think that comes up often, and we were just starting to talk about, is how do we get new voices to the conversation? So we can go to community groups, but a lot of times that's self-selecting. So just posing that question is challenging yourself to really get these new voices to the table, and that can be harder and more work, but just what does that look like and how do we get there? So
great. I love it. I'm happy you all ran out of time. That means just you're in it and experiencing each other. And if you made a new friend, hooray. I also want to be mindful. I report back, so much to share, ran a little bit late. We do want a brief bio break. I'm going to ask that we just do a 2-minute, just get your water, take care of your body as you need, and so that we have as much time for Cornerstone as needed. Can we come back at 06? I know that's really short, but there's a wealth of knowledge that is shared, and I want to make sure that we have enough time. Does that sound good to folks? Quick, brief break. Okay, come back in 2 minutes. Commercial break. Bye. We are so fortunate that Cornerstone Theater Company is going to be sharing really some of their transformative work that they've been doing. I am going to pass the mic to, I think, Michael and Megan, and then hopefully they can introduce themselves and their work. Are you
Sure.
able
Thank
to
you. Yeah,
share?
thank you, Theresa. I can just introduce myself really quick. I'm Megan Wanlass. I'm the managing director of Cornerstone Theater Company. And we have Michael John Garcés, Cornerstone's artistic director, who is literally in the midst of trying to get to rehearsal in the middle of, are you in Rosebud, Michael? And I guess his car is needing to be towed. So he's dialed in. Can you, I can't see your square, but are you here and can you hear us? Hmm.
Okay.
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I'm not next time here.
Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're having a
Can you
little
hear
bit, we're having a little bit of, we're just hearing a little bit of static, but we can hear you now.
Okay. Late. And the connectivity is not very good where I am now because we're sort of stuck out in the middle of the presentation. So, hear me now?
Oh yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Should I begin?
Sure.
Okay, great. So I'm talking about, I'm here to talk about Cornerstone Theater Company's project, Wicoun, which is a community engaged project that we've been making in South Dakota. Larissa Fasthorse is our playwright. She is from the Sichangu tribe, Rosebud Reservation, and so born and raised in South Dakota, but has been living in Los Angeles for the last, I think, well over 20 years. She is a successful playwright in a lot of different contexts, and she is. This is the third of a series of projects that we've been doing, sort of interrogations into contemporary indigeneity in a community engaged process. We did a project in Los Angeles called Urban Res, exploring working with the community of Tongva and Quiche peoples of the Los Angeles River Basin, as well as other indigenous peoples. It was a center of relocation in the 50s and whatnot. And that project was about 10 years ago. And then we did a project called Native Nation, working with people who live and are from the land in the Phoenix Tempe area, Salt River, Pima Maricopa Indian community, Gila River, as well as White Mountain Apache and San Carlos Apache, and then folks from across the state and across the country who are indigenous from other parts. We've been coming to South Dakota for the past 5 years, since 2019, obviously interrupted by the pandemic shutdown, although we continue to do engagement during the shutdown, finding analog ways to do that. So we basically started coming to South Dakota, meeting with individuals and organizations, some of which we were already familiar with from our work previous, some of which were our playwrights connections. One of our board members, Clementine Bordeaux, who is lives in Oglala, Pine Ridge. She came to us through our work on Urban Res. She was a cast member as a grad student at UCLA. She's now living here back here in South Dakota, and she's a board member of Cornerstone. And so she was a big partner for us, a big part of our engagement, doing a lot of outreach for us here on the ground, and using her connections at arts organizations and community-based organizations throughout the state We have visited, I think, 8 of the 9 reservations in our trips here, primarily Pine Ridge, Rosebud, Yankton, Crow Creek, and Eagle Butte, interviewing people, doing story circles, talk circles, events, attending events, and even sponsoring events, doing a lot of youth workshops for a wide range of organizations, Lakota Youth Development in Rosebud, Braveheart Society in Yankton, Title I schools in Eagle Butte and on the Cheyenne River Reservation. And so we've done quite a bit of work like that. And really just, engaging with people on a wide range of walks of life, also urban Indians primarily in Rapid City, which is our town partner, though also in Sioux Falls and in Pierre. And when during the pandemic, which of course was a big challenge, especially because connectivity on the res is challenging, and then there's also just the issue of connectivity for people who are not as enfranchised as others. We did a lot of analog engagement, created we had our designers create some wonderful notebooks that were sort of hand created with a whole bunch of prompts that we gave to kids throughout mostly Pine Ridge and Road, and got some really fantastic notebooks back that had a big impact on the art we were making. That was all through correspondence. We also did some online engagement through Racing Magpie, which is an arts organization based in Rapid City, and a couple other community partners as well during the pandemic. So we were able to sort of keep at least some of the work going on. And as soon as we were able to get back here during the pandemic, we started coming back and doing youth workshops and visiting folks again. So obviously big challenges for us in terms of but also the project is just really challenging in terms of scope. In talking to people on any one of the reds, there was clearly a desire for any project we did to be representative of the whole of the people, as opposed to one specific locale. Each reservation, a lot of the reservations are quite large, not all of them, and so a desire for us to have a wide geographic reach within any given reservation and then across the state. We hear that a lot, and so trying to find ways to make a project that's artistically ambitious and still had some, still had a range of possibilities of participation. The piece we've made has a fairly small cast. I think we represent 8 in different capacities, 8 or 9 of the tribes in South Dakota. Visual artists, musical artists, as well as our cast of actors to participate, in the show, and that's been pretty great. And but the challenge of geography has been real. As we're experiencing today, one of our cars got stuck on a dirt road here in the reservation. I just got picked up, going to rehearsal, and also just the logistics of travel for our community has been something that we've been grappling with quite a bit. So that's, I think, been perhaps the biggest challenge of this project, is scale. To do a project of this depth in the community and then bring it to locations that don't have the infrastructure that people might be used to in terms of support. So, it can be hard to find a restaurant to eat at night. It's hard to find a lot of facilities for a group of people. It's hard to find a place to live, for our group as we try to find hubs in the state. So that has just been a big challenge. So yeah, so Megan, I think if anybody doesn't have any.
Oh, we lost you. Oh,
Hello? Hello?
oh, we can hear you now.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, yeah, it's a little challenging talking into the phone like this without any response. I don't know if there are any questions or any topics I can address specifically.
Yeah, should we open it up to questions, Margie?
Go for it. I actually put one in the chat myself, and Theresa might have a question to ask as well. Theresa, do you want to jump in?
I think that's a great question you have in, Margie. Go for it.
Okay. My question was, were there any unexpected challenges in bringing your, very deep form of engagement to these locations?
Say that again, sorry.
I was asking if you encountered any unexpected challenges with using your very committed and deep form of engagement in a completely different place. So I know you had long distance issues and COVID issues, which I think you dealt with in really interesting ways. But I was just thinking more about the engagement itself.
Each community we work with is it can be pretty unique, even throughout our history. So I don't know that we and we have had this wonderful sort of building of methodology and sort of understanding of how to work in Indigenous communities, all of which are extremely diverse and different for the past 10 years. So I'm not sure everything is unexpected in a way, and in terms of particular unexpected challenges that are specific to this community. I think there's been a lot of learnings. I think we're constantly trying to adapt our methodology to the needs of the community, to our understanding of what we're being asked to do in this collaboration, what is appropriate, what makes sense, etc. In terms of unexpected challenges, I do think that the desire, for example, for us to do a lot of work with youth was not something we anticipated was going to be as central as it has been, and trying to adapt to that and address what is being asked of us within our capacity, and sometimes in excess of our capacity has been a challenge. It's been a joyful challenge. We have done some really good work and fallen short a couple times, but I think that's one thing that occurs to me that has been something we have been trying to adapt to. I think the challenge of a cast that is really grappling with the issues the community is facing are fairly extreme at times, and being able to support that in a way that is meaningful and creates, helps them have the personal bandwidth to do the show has been ongoing. And while I think that is something that we face often, because we're on the road over a fairly wide geography, it's been particularly challenging. And they don't have their home support systems as readily available to them as usual.
Great. Theresa, there's a couple questions in the chat. I don't know if you're able to see them. Do you want me to read them? Or can you see them?
I see it. There's a question from Karen. Are there examples where you had to pivot from your original intentions to address what was going on with your partners, where it ended up actually working out better than planned?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting question. We try to be as open in our intentions as possible. Like we show up and we say, hey, we're theater artists. We'd like to make a piece of theater, whatever that might mean. And it could look like a lot of different things. It could look like a play. It could look nothing like a play, right? And we're, the sort of what we're seeking is in our story circles and in conversation is both the themes and also the structure of the play and where the play should happen. So I'm not sure that we had any intention beyond that exploration, or I'm pretty sure we didn't. And so the pivoting has been more trying to stay as responsive to what we interpret as what we're hearing and the needs. So like, I don't think we imagined something that looked quite as much like a play as what we have. The first two projects we did in this sort of series have looked more like cultural affairs where plays sort of erupt in the midst of a more immersive situation. And in this particular case, it kind of looks like a play with its beginning, middle, and end. We imagined something more immersive, and of course, with COVID, et cetera, we haven't done that. So it's been something that is ultimately a bit more conventional in that sense. Although the play, I think, doesn't look like a conventional theater project, but it certainly has a beginning, middle, and end, and has a story in a way that is less. It's not as immersive. COVID didn't permit that, and there was a real desire for us to tell with a clear narrative, positive stories to and for the community, less desire or caring about whether people outside the community see the play. And so that's something that we've been that we responded to very specifically in making the play.
Great. I think that's helpful. You're not tied to a specific outcome, but it's like a commitment to the process and the people.
Correct.
Beautiful. There's another question in the chat. For a project that has been developing for over a decade, what does success look like? Does it exist in a successful play or something that builds over time?
I mean, I think for us, it's both, right? Like for me, it is really important that the play is successful, that we create something that is aesthetically exciting for people, pleasing, is beautiful, challenging in ways that I think art can and should be, and at the same time, create something that community members feel is having an impact on the community in ways that are tangible, ways that are, or at least deeply felt and spoken of in ways that are meaningful and speak to positive change. We've gotten already a lot of feedback on the project that has been extremely positive, both from individuals and from organizations that are partnered with us. A lot of people talking about how this is fairly unprecedented in their particular context, and meaningful both as a model and as an experience for audience and participants. And so, my personal ethos is that we should succeed equally in terms of aesthetic outcomes, which is obviously highly subjective, but hopefully holding ourselves to rigorous standards. And then at the same time, there's no compromise with community outcomes, community partners feeling invested, feeling really good about their participation and about the outcome in terms of impact on the community. And we've been getting good response on both fronts.
Great, thank you both so much. I know you're in the middle of your performances, rehearsals, car trouble and all those things. So thank you both for really taking time out and just sharing your learnings. More to come. We're at our closing already. We're going to take the next 3 minutes to do some of the next steps, announcements, and then also I believe there is an exit survey. And so I'm going to pass it on to Melissa for anything else, for any final information. But yes, thank you all for your time, your attention, your care, and for spending time together.
Thank you, Theresa. Could we get the slide deck up for a second? Wanted to also direct your attention to the poll that's coming your way, the exit poll. We are continuously evolving our program, so we'd love your feedback. So please complete this brief survey, super brief. And once you've done that, I would like you to take note of some of the other activities that we have coming up. And I'm going to put them in the chat as well. Well, first of all, a lot of the reflection questions and the tool itself that was referenced today can be found in the workbook as a reminder, something you can take back and take back to your team. So the link to that is in the chat again. Then in terms of upcoming events, we have office hours coming up on June 21st. We have a workshop working with artists with Renee Pachaki coming up on July 19th. And then if you want a one-on-one consultation, you can sign up anytime. It links you to my calendar. We have a brief chat, and then I connect you with some resource team members. So please stay tuned for more on the workshop. Thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a good afternoon.